All right, and we are back. Welcome into another episode of Chasing 1969, a New York Jets podcast. Today is Wednesday, July 18th, and Theodore and Jets Nation, the boys are back in town. Jets players are reporting to camp. We've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. We've got the Quinnen Williams extension celebration. We've got some Hard Knocks stuff to get into. Before we get to all of that, and before I welcome in Teddy here, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Same as the YouTube channel. Got, I think, a couple subscribers within the last week, one or two. So I appreciate that.
Nice.
I appreciate the people supporting.
Shouts out you guys.
Thank you for that. Make sure to follow Teddy on Twitter at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake with 4 A's. Theodore, you've had a very fun week. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I do real quick. You said it was the 18th. It's the 19th today.
Oh, the
this will
19th.
Come out tomorrow. First day of training camp. Big news. Exciting things.
I felt so good about that open too. I felt so good about that open.
It was going
a little bit off.
I caught you there though.
I
don't want our listeners to be confused. But no, I'm doing good. My car was just stolen in Rochester yesterday, which so it's been a little bit of a stressful last 24 hours, but it happened right before I went to go see Post Malone. Still made it to the concert, which was a blast. They found the car. I'm dealing with all the things. So I'm choosing not to focus on that and to focus on the Jets to prepare. I've been watching Hard Knocks all day, just the old Hard Knocks on YouTube from the last time the Jets did it, which has been a lot of fun. So yeah, feeling good. I'm ready to dive in, and we got an extension to talk about, which is awesome, and we have goddamn training camp here. Players reported and getting things rolling, which is really, really exciting.
Very exciting, very exciting. So sorry to hear about your car, but things are on the come up. What did the police officer recommended that you get a Tesla, correct? That's what he said.
Yeah, basically Kias are really easy to steal. I have a Kia, and the guy was just roasting me the whole time. He's like, "You're still driving this Kia around?" I'm like, "Bro, I didn't even know this was a thing."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Kias are the easy ones to steal these days. And he wanted me to get a Tesla.
Yeah, good. Teslas are fun. Teddy, the Jets are back. Fun kind of snippet. This really isn't like a conversation, but just to talk about how excited the fan base is at this current moment with this upcoming season. Tickets to training camp, thousands of them sold out in 3 minutes upon being released on the Jets website. The website almost crashed. Took under 5 minutes to sell out tickets to training camp. Just if anything, just I'd like to reiterate how exciting of a season we are about to experience. Hopefully it doesn't fall flat on our face. Hopefully it plays out the way that we all expect that it could. But nonetheless, a very exciting start for a fan base that is very passionate and excited to see the Jets be good for the first time in a while.
Definitely love to see it. It is funny, going back thinking of how training camp used to be with all open practices, and now there's only 4 or 5 a year, and the green and white scrimmage. The change over the past 10, 12 years has been pretty crazy. But no, it's exciting. I mean, people are excited to see this team and get out there, and I totally get it. I think training camp is an awesome time, and if you can get out there and see those boys early, that's the best way to scratch the football itch when you're still stuck in July and August.
Nothing was better than being a teenage kid, and you know this more than anybody because you did not miss a practice, but just heading over, just like a quick bike ride for you. Honestly, it wouldn't have been a bad walk either, just heading right to SUNY Cortland campus, watch training camp, go with the Jets Fest where you're running through the inflatable kind of maze that they had there too. It was a great experience in a few years that were really enjoyable and obviously crafted a very passionate fan here in Teddy Pristash. So training camp on the horizon. It's a good time to be alive. Other news from around the league, just something that we had talked about for a little bit at the time that he was still a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins signs a 2-year deal with the Tennessee Titans, about worth up to at max what I saw, maybe like $32 million over the 2 years with incentives. He was choosing between the Titans and the Patriots. It seems like the Patriots were willing to go there money-wise. What did you think of the signing? What did you think of his decision to, I guess, go with a team that could be deemed as the favorite in their respective division in a lackluster AFC South, but still not something where it was like, at first it was like, oh, are the Bills or the Chiefs going to sign him? And it's like, no, the Titans are going to get him. It's weird.
Yeah. I guess as a Jets podcast, I think the main takeaway for us here is he didn't sign with the Patriots or the Bills,
Always fun.
which is a positive. Makes it a little easier for us to not have to deal with him, I guess, in the division. Definitely interesting. He's signing with the Titans because you would think he would kind of ring chase, and you would think that some of these other teams would be willing to kind of get that done. But he obviously does sign for a ton of money as a guy who's aging out of the league a little bit. And, I think that we as fans, after seeing a Titans team with, a Ryan Tannehill injury and everything that happened to them last year, it's really easy to see them being terrible. I think in their minds, there's maybe more of a, let's try to just go all in, and we still have Derrick Henry. We still got some pieces, like, let's try to win. So it kind of makes sense from that perspective. But I mean, do I think the Titans are going to be all that great this year? Not particularly. So, interesting. I'm happy he didn't sign with one of our rivals in the AFC East. And the Titans definitely needed a receiver. So
yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for the Titans. I think of them as I think of New England, where they're not just going to bottom out for a season. I don't think there's a season where they're like, oh, we're going to tank for an X amount of picks. So I think they were looking at their team saying, we're in a relatively bad division. We could probably still push for, the division title or the wild card spot. But to me, for DeAndre Hopkins, I look at it as just like a money thing at this point, and there's no state income tax in Tennessee. I don't know if you know that. It's a fun place to live.
That's
right.
Fire.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it. I love living here. Except for the fact that the Titans are here. But regardless, I looked at it as more of like a financial thing where Hopkins didn't look at the Chiefs, didn't look at the Bills because they didn't have the money to offer him. They looked at the Patriots and the Titans. Both needed a receiver, both kind of middle of the pack teams, but both were able to offer him a decent amount of money. He was looking for that Odell type contract, which, the Jets were never really in on, which I think is funny because up to a certain point, they were in on Odell until the money came from Baltimore. And it seemed like DeAndre was probably looking for that same type money. He gets the average year, and I believe he gets did Odell sign a 1-year deal or was he a multiple? I can't even remember now, but still the money on an average year basis was around the same. But yeah, he goes to Tennessee. The Jets were never really in on it, but nice to not have him in the division at least. Although I'm saying that while he's in the Colts division, so
Yeah, I believe it's a 1-year deal.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us on to really the two big things that we're here to talk about, Teddy. The Jets were never in on DeAndre Hopkins, but they certainly were always in on landing Quinnen Williams. Let's talk about a transition there. Fuck yeah, sign me up. Quinnen Williams
great work.
Signs a 4-year, $96 million contract extension. I one of these days, Teddy, I want us to have news break on a Monday or a Tuesday so we can actually discuss it and not have to wait a week for it to happen. Hard Knocks that we're going to get into, and this Quinnen extension happened the day or two after we finished recording last week's pod. So we're a little late to getting this in, but we're here nonetheless. Contract comes in. He lands the second highest average value in the league, $24 million a year, behind Aaron Donald, who is up at like $31.67 million a year and $500,000 above the next highest guy, Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons. So to me, it seemed from the start, we said this from the beginning, that a deal was going to get done. We knew it was going to get done. The holdout for a while was Quinnen over the years that he wanted. If you take a look at the way that Joe Douglas has structured a lot of his big contracts, it's been a 3-year deal where it's 2 years with the guaranteed money, and the third year is kind of we're going to get to that third year and decide if we're going to keep you on the team or not. Quinnen didn't want that, and so Joe Douglas budged here for the first time really and went for a 3-year deal, with that fourth year being a larger sum, and it's like hey, we'll see where we're feeling 3 years from now. So Quinnen gets his way with the years. The money is kind of around where we expected it to be. What were your feelings, when the deal struck and you were like, okay, we've got this all settled before camp starts, and now we can go in here as one big happy family?
Yeah, definitely primarily like relief. I think on the first podcast really that we talked about this offseason, both of our takeaways was just kind of like, it's not an option to not have Quinnen Williams suit up for you this year and be on this team. He is a star player in the middle of your defense. I will say with the deals, I mean, that is kind of shocking to me because, like, if Quinnen had signed a 3-year deal with, only 2 years guaranteed, like, that would have been shocking to me in a way
Yeah.
because he's that good of a player. I think it's just, we need, like, it's just really exciting to have this guy who was a first team All Pro last year. That's top 2 at the freaking position in the AP All Pro team, which, like, that right there is such an accomplishment. You look at his sack numbers, his rookie year, he had 2.5, and then moves up to 7, then 6, and then this last year gets 12. I mean, what did we always say about Quinnen Williams last year and in the previous years? We always said we need this guy to step up and really be that game breaker that you see, like, affect the game every single week. And I really think he was able to accomplish that last year. Really a breakout year in year 4 in that contract year, which, I think he deserves the money. I never had a problem with that. And, when we talked about somewhere landing between, where Jeffrey Simmons was and where Aaron Donald was, like, we are on the lower end of that. So it does kind of seem like a win from that regard. But at the end of the day, I mean, they kind of could have signed him for whatever, and I'd probably be saying it's good because this was a guy we needed to have. So the fact that we got it done, especially a couple weeks before training camp or a couple days before training camp, it feels good to get it done.
Yeah. The Aaron Donald money was never like, I was never like, oh, they're going to be at like 28, 29 a year, because Aaron Donald's a different type of player. And that was really a contract to convince him to not retire, almost still in the prime of his career. This contract will be surpassed probably by the end of training camp, because Chris Jones is due for an extension. And all things considered, he was, Quinnen was on the All-Pro team this past season, but Chris Jones has had, I guess, maybe the longer, sustainability of being a top defensive tackle in this league. So he'll surpass that number. He's kind of been poking the bear, saying,
he was the other All Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's a matter of time before he gets his pay done. It was nice for Quinnen to, wait for all these other names to get their contract extensions, because he was able to say, like, okay, everybody else is done. Yes, Chris Jones wants more money, but, like, I'm in this tier, so put me above everybody else. So that's good to see. I liked the quotes from everybody. I don't know. I liked reading the news piece and hearing what everybody had to say. Joe Douglas, we're thrilled to have Quinnen as a New York Jet for the foreseeable future. He embodies everything we look for in our players. Leader on and off the field, does everything asked of him and more. Young, ascending player who has shown a consistent ability to dominate the line of scrimmage and help this team win. We're happy to have the business of football behind us and turn our focus to getting ready for 2023. Woody Johnson coming out. Quinnen is the epitome of a Jet. His commitment to this organization and our fans is consistently on display in his play, in his preparation, and his work serving those in the area. Big Q. To me, I love hearing this as well, too. The success of this organization is beyond important to me, and completing this deal allows me to turn all my attention to positively impacting that. I'm thrilled to put forth my best efforts alongside my brothers to get prepared for this season ahead of us. We got all this done before training camp. Yes, people were, worried about him changing his Twitter bio, and people are like, oh, the Jets, we knew all along a deal was going to get done. It's fantastic that as we sit here with camps, players reporting today, camp starting tomorrow, we're all here as one big happy family, and we're ready to get ready for there's no more distractions, I guess, is the way I like to put it. Like, yes, you could take a look and be worried about Makai, and there's some other things with the team we'll discuss later in this, but as far as lingering questions of players and their availability, this was the last big one that we wanted to see finish before training camp started, and we got to that point.
Yeah, definitely. And now we can turn our focus to what us Jets fans love to talk about at the beginning of training camp, which is our 2 unsigned rookies, with Will McDonald and I forgot which other one we haven't signed yet. But
you're right, you got me.
But I think those will get done soon enough. Yeah, it's no big deal. I think we're less worried about it this year than we have been in years prior.
It's always
kind of where we see this team, but it'll get done. It's continued to get done every year. But yeah, man, I mean, Quinnen is everything to this defense. Gonna see, like, him and his brother both getting extended with the Jets, both going to be here for the next 2 to 3 years at least. It's just exciting. And he is that guy, he is that absolute dominator on the defensive line that, every team needs.
And I think as well too is in this regime that we've seen, there have been some players that, when they become frustrated or become unhappy with a current situation or a deal, they'll take it one way. You think most notably about Elijah Moore, who's now with the Cleveland Browns. As soon as his situation turned sour, it was get me out of here. I like to think of, Denzel Mims at the beginning of training camp last year was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And he stuck through, but there was never a vocal, complaint from Quinnen of, hey, I've been on this team now for a few years. We've sucked. Get me out of here. He has always been, like Woody Johnson says, the epitome of the Jets. He is a guy that, they have invested a lot into, and he's rewarded them with great play on the field. So all things together, just really happy to see this deal get done. And you've got a player that's, entering the prime of his career, and he's being paid to do so. So very happy to see this deal get done.
Shouts out to Joe Douglas and
Yay.
Quinnen Williams' agent.
I know he gave someone a second contract. He finally gave one of his guys a second contract. Good for Joe Douglas getting that done.
Hell yeah. Love to see it.
Well, we'll also see a lot of Quinnen coming up on this year's edition of HBO's Hard Knocks as the Jets, and we've talked about this for a while. We kind of knew that this was coming. We even talked about it last week, being like, yeah, it's going to be the Jets. Shortly after it was announced that Hard Knocks has asked the Jets to be the subject of this year's show, against the Jets' will, necessarily. We've heard Rodgers come out and players say as well, too. Saleh said it a month or so back about how they didn't want the distraction of it. The distraction is here. Hard Knocks will be, covering the New York Jets throughout training camp. The big wrinkle, and I guess I should preface this, we're going to draft, the fun part of this show coming up is we are going to draft the storylines that we're most excited for coming up. We're going to go back and forth 4 rounds. We're going to do a snake draft as well, too. I think there's a clear 1-1. Teddy doesn't think so. So we're going to go back and forth here. Great storylines that we're personally just very excited to watch. So you've got that. You've also before we get to that, though, I think the biggest thing that's come out in the last few days that is a little bit worrisome is because the Jets have been so reluctant to be the subjects of this year's, edition of Hard Knocks, is they are not going to be giving the same type of coverage that teams of the past have allowed HBO to cover. Most notably, this is, they've already said they don't believe that the business of showing players getting cut from the team is appropriate to be, televised. So we won't be getting any of that. It also just makes me think of some of the more, not negative or sour, but maybe not the big fluffy pieces of happiness and joy. I'm not sure if we're going to get the full access to those parts of this show. So when, 2-part questions, Hetty. Excited to finally know that the Jets are going to be there on Hard Knocks. I know the answer is yes to that, but also are you a little worried that we may not get the best product because the Jets have shown their reluctance to allow, a deep, dive into the organization?
Yeah, I guess my thoughts about it aren't as like concerned as I guess yours are, or as negative about that. I definitely think it's interesting that the Jets have been so vocal about not doing Hard Knocks. And I think it's interesting that even after kind of everyone knew that it was going to be a done deal, they've kind of continued to speak out against it. Players on social media, Aaron Rodgers at the golf event the other day, saying,
yep,
they completely forced it down our throats and now we have to deal with it. Those kind of things are kind of like, all right, that's a little odd. It does make sense to me, I guess, that there was some type of compromise here, because for a team that was really, really adamant against it, and even at the point of like, okay, guys, it's going to be you, despite your wishes, they were still trying to get out of it and push against it. Like, I think that's really interesting. Not being able to show the players being cut, that is a bit of like an odd thing, especially because it's such a big deal. And we're getting into the storylines later. And for me, I guess I didn't approach it so much as dream storylines as much as like, I believe that these are what they're going to talk about, because Hard Knocks just like loves to kind of, the story's written, like we said last week, like people are going to get cut. People are going to be, fighting for their jobs. It is a little odd to not be showing that when that's kind of like the biggest thing that happens in training camp is cuts. But I don't completely disagree with the Jets takes that it's like that's someone's job, that's their livelihood, and you'll still know they're cut without necessarily showing like them walking out and getting their playbook and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess part of me hopes that this will take away a little bit some of the time spent on those fringe roster players to put more focus on like the bigger stars.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Yeah.
how I was kind of hoping for it.
Yeah.
But I didn't really see it as like oh my God, like we're not going to get the guys being cut and going to get their playbooks with like the assistant manager, like that didn't really cross my mind.
I'll say there's one storyline that I'm hoping I get to draft when we do this in a little bit that does deal with that. He's
is it
very no
Denzel
no no
Mims
no
getting
no no
cut?
don't even go there. Don't even go there. Don't
I
even
bet
go
you it
there. We're
is.
not talking yet. We're not talking. We're not tipping picks. But there's a storyline that
Okay.
I'm very intrigued about, and it is somebody who is not a guarantee to make the roster. Just if you take a look at positions and how many people can fit in that position group, how many people, are usually carried on a roster at that position group. So there are those players that I'm interested in that I'm like, are you going to go into the story if you know the end result you're not going to be able to show? Like, there's certain things that I think are going to be different about it. Yes, there's still enough to talk about with the New York Jets coming up. I mean, you could do an episode alone on a numerous amount of guys, but it will be interesting to see, I'm not tipping picks. I'll talk about them when we get there, but there's a few where I'm like, if they're not allowing maybe some of the negative stories to be told, are we going to get good stories on these select individuals?
Yeah. And I guess my impression of it would be that hopefully we will still get those stories, but just not the intimate scenes of like,
Yeah.
hey, let's get X player in here and we're gonna let you go XYZ, whatever. I think there might be more, you know, it may just be that Robert Saleh handles that in a different way, that's like more kind of humane, and he probably does. So that will be an interesting point to watch. Do we know when Hard Knocks premieres? I know we should probably know this.
Yeah.
But with training camp starting up probably 2-3 weeks from now.
It is going to be August 8th,
August 8th.
2023.
Okay.
So we're just a few weeks away.
Yeah. So, we'll see. That is a good point. I guess I didn't really think about, I more just saw it as those specific scenes, but obviously you want them to be giving you a clear picture of both the positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
And I think that's, training camp, that's what it's about, especially for these guys who aren't guaranteed starters, is they're trying to make that 53-man roster and they're trying to make the practice team. And that's a huge piece of it. So that will be interesting to see how they kind of balance that all out. But I guess just to say again, I was less concerned about that than you were.
Yeah. Hard Knocks to me the last few years I haven't given too much attention to because it has been the same, wash, rinse, repeat, same storylines. You've got the quarterback story, you've got the head coach, you've got the funny, position coach, you've got the guy that's on the fringe of the roster, the guy that's dealt with injuries. Like, what stories you're getting.
Right, exactly.
This is a little bit different. This is a little bit different of a situation. It's a weird situation that a team that was, sitting right outside the playoffs gets, selected in there. We talked about how rare it was for the Jets to be in a situation where they were asked to be, the conditions that you fit into Hard Knocks. Like the Jets shouldn't be
usually a team will volunteer.
Exactly. Yep. So here we are, and there's some fun stuff to talk about. So Teddy, anything else that you want to get into before we go into our draft? Now, I went from the storylines I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, we'll I think the draft will work out regardless of kind of how we approached it, because I think that we will be able to look back, which storylines did we get to see that and how accurate were we, and which ones were the big ones, and I think we'll be able to kind of see who nailed it. Before we draft, I guess just a little fodder about Hard Knocks. So as most people, probably everyone listening to this knows, the Jets were on the Hard Knocks in 2010, in their second year with Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan. Second
Cortland,
year
New York,
doing training camp in Cortland, where Blake and I grew up. It was a great time. And so I spent, like I said earlier, some of the day watching it, and it was just making me laugh. So obviously I'm going to watch every second of Hard Knocks this year because it's about the Jets, right? But basically what Hard Knocks does for me every year is I get excited for football and I watch, and then I kind of get bored that we're focused on these like fringe players that don't really mean much and don't end up like playing and whatever. So in the last Jets Hard Knocks, episode 1, it took 13 minutes and 49 seconds. That was the time mark where they officially went from like the starters and the guys everyone knows about to just like a couple of backups, like sharing a dorm room, in Cortland, New York. A couple of guys they were talking about: Aaron Kia, Kevin Basped, both guys who got cut in the first episode. I know Basped had knee issues. I don't think he ever played. I don't know what happened to Kia. But just those names, you can kind of see how it's like, okay, no one really remembers those guys.
Nope, not at all.
Only other thing I wanted to say about Hard Knocks, with the last time the Jets were on it, it really helps to show the evolution of football and the NFL as we know it, because one of the big storylines of episode 1 is the fullback competition, because the Jets had Tony Richardson, they had the draft pick John Connor, the Terminator, and then they had this other guy, Jason Davis, who was kind of like a journeyman who was pretty good. And that was like a huge deal. Like, which one of we bringing in 3 good fullbacks, which one of these guys is going to win the job? Like, and now they just like let the backup tight end be the fullback, or you know what I mean? So it's just funny to see like
what's
you can really see how much the NFL has changed just from things like that.
Man. Yeah, I remember, even to the point the NFL, even in the last like 5 years, I remember when the Rams were the subject of Hard Knocks, and it was still, who's the guy? Jeff Fisher with the mustache, and it was Jared Goff's rookie season, and they were just like in dorm rooms in I don't know if it was UCLA or USC, but just like the difference of the life that the players are now living in training camp. They definitely try to make it a little bit more comfortable than stuffing them into college dorms, especially for the Jets when it was like a D3,
I truly think, and I mean, the Bills still do it at St. John Fisher. Like, people still travel places.
Yeah.
I think a big thing with the Jets in Cortland is like it's far away. It's really inconveniencing these guys. What do you got?
You had the insider tip. There was almost a point in which it was going to Portland, New York.
I know.
There was almost there. There was.
Yeah, no, it would be. It's an interesting thing. A lot of these NFL coaches, I think, like when Rex did it in Cortland, I think the point was to give these guys a training camp experience where they're away and they're only focused on football and all these things, which is fine. But then you remember, like, these are millionaires who are professional athletes who all have families and all have people who live in New Jersey. It's like, it makes a lot more sense to allow these guys to go home and kind of have that.
And they're spending their summers going to Doug's Fish Fry.
Right. Literally in the dark horse and the red jug. Yeah.
So funny. I would have loved to have been, old enough at that point to be someone that could like walk into those bars.
Yeah,
obviously,
go to those bars with those boys
at this time. But it's I'm getting some audio playing elsewhere. I touched something with my AirPod. All right, got that fixed. That was weird.
You okay?
Yeah, I touched my AirPod and it started playing the episode of The Yak that I was listening to.
Nice.
So I started hearing Kate in my ear. So
that's funny.
There was something else I was going to bring up about Cortland. I can't remember now. Oh yeah, I would have loved for that to like come to fruition where they did come to Cortland again for training camp this year.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine just like your Twitter account or like the Chasing 69 account breaking that news and just being like, can you credit us, please? Yes,
no,
the one with 50 tweets and like 500 followers. Can you give us a little credit here? We were on that first.
Yeah.
Because I would have replied to everybody being like, please credit. Please credit.
It would have been fun if the Jets had if they ever go back to Cortland. That will be a blast. And a couple local boys like me and Blake. I know probably everyone who listens to this goes from Jersey and is like pissed at us.
I'd go back and spend my summer in Cortland. If at this point, like with us doing the show too, like I would go stake out for a month. I'd be like, hey mom, I'm coming back home.
Yeah,
probably tell my dad, but regardless. Anyways, Teddy, we're starting off a draft of Hard Knock storylines that we are most looking forward to. I thought there was a clear 1-1. We're going to do a snake draft, so I'll give you 2 and 3. To get things started, to me, the clear and obvious number 1 storyline here for Hard Knocks is Aaron Rodgers. Best quarterback to grace, the green and white jersey since Joe Namath. He is, brought in here to be the attitude adjuster for this franchise, to be the guy that is taking them from mediocrity to, below mediocrity to mediocrity is the bare minimum of what you're going to get out of Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback here. Getting the storyline of his decision and him evaluating his options this past offseason and taking a look at the Jets and saying, nope, this is the place that I want to be. This is the opportunity like Brady had in Tampa, like Matt Stafford had in Los Angeles. This is where I am going to continue on my career, prove to, the doubters of the world that I still have stuff left in the tank, that I'm still one of the greatest quarterbacks in the game. And I'm going to take a team that is ready to win, but just needs a leader at the quarterback position and bring them to the playoffs and hopefully even further towards a potential Super Bowl championship. So, when I looked at all the storylines, like there's a lot of great stuff here, but Aaron Rodgers is the story of this Jets team. The Jets would not be, if Aaron Rodgers was not on the Jets, would we be looking at Hard Knocks here in Washington, then looking at Sam Howell over Zach Wilson? Like that, to me, Aaron Rodgers becoming a New York Jet is the reason that Hard Knocks is here in New Jersey. So he's my number one pick here for this draft.
Yeah, good pick. The only reason I was hesitant when you said that is I didn't know if that would be like too broad, I guess. But yes, Aaron Rodgers, It will be a huge part of this, obviously, because that is what gives our team so much expectations, I guess I had on my list, I had, a question mark next to Aaron Rodgers. It's just interesting to see him and his demeanor, and say he doesn't want to be a part of it. Like, and it's not like he's just a young, early player in the league. He has a lot of control over what he does, I feel like. So is there any worry that there's going to be some lack of Aaron Rodgers? Like, obviously we're going to get the football stuff and we're going to get that. Do you think we get any Aaron Rodgers backstory? Are we going to see the inside of his house? Are we going to, meet his girlfriend if he has one? These are all questions. See, I'm more focused on the outside of football stuff at the moment.
Interesting.
But I'm just curious because a guy like Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't seem like maybe the most open guy in the world.
I'll tell you what, there's one quarterback in the league I know that goes and sits on one of the biggest NFL shows weekly during the season and talks for 30 to 40. Aaron Rodgers, to me, he loves to talk shit about the media and the publicity, but he loves being the topic of conversation. He didn't need to text Adam Schefter, lose my number.
Yep.
He didn't need to do all this stuff. He loves being the center of attention, and there's no better place to do that than being in New York as the, talking point of Hard Knocks. I don't know if we'll get everything. I'm sure he's going to want to just make it mostly football focused. He's never been someone to really get into his personal life. And, there's a lot of his personal life that we know. He doesn't have, great familial relationships. His family isn't too close with him. He's got, there's a lot of stories with him in his personal life that we will never really hear the true, his side to. So I don't know if we'll get that, but we'll get, why he chose to come to the Jets, what made this the right decision for him to continue his career, why he chose to give up, almost 20 years there in Green Bay. So I think he will be the center of all of the football conversations. I would love to get into his personal life. I don't think it'll be that way, but regardless, like I just, one thing that I heard hours ago before we taped this, Diana Rossini was a guest on the Ryan Russillo podcast and was talking about Aaron Rodgers coming to the Jets and just like what that was going to bring, because she believes that they're going to win the AFC East. And she really highlighted the fact that, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh had been trying to cultivate a new culture for an organization that was desperate of a change for over the last 2 decades. And it was going well, and they're getting these pieces in place. But what they were missing was this leader who comes in and just like has already walked the walk. The Jets were preaching talk the talk to all these young up and coming players, but to then bring in a former MVP, a Super Bowl champion, people in the organization were texting Diana Rossini within hours of him being in the organization and being like, shit has changed. This is different. So to me, this is going to be such a huge impact. We already all know that, but I think it's going to be more so than we imagine, because they have somebody in there now that is the established winner. It's not a first-time head coach. It's not a first-time GM. It's not 2 rookies of the year. It is a guy that has been around for decades, has been one of the greatest quarterbacks to play the game, and he is here now to take this team to the next level.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. I think if we're going to get to episode 1, there's going to be some type of opening, about the team, but I wouldn't be surprised. Aaron Rodgers is probably the number one thing they talk about, because that's what's on everyone's mind. So I think that's a great pick. My first pick.
I was gonna say, you've got 2 now. Where are you going?
Yeah, so I have 2. So for my first one, I'm gonna go with one that I'll get I really think this will be in episode 1. Like, I think probably right after Aaron Rodgers, I think they're going to talk about this. And I think that's going to be, a bit of a combination of the Quinnen Williams extension, into Quincy's extension as well earlier in the offseason, and some aspect of the 2 of them outside of the Jets facility, just at a house, having like a family day or like something like that. And I think there's going to be a huge focus on look, there's 2 brothers on the same NFL team, because you got to remember.
Did you know that Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce are brothers that played in the Super Bowl this year?
Wild.
Crazy.
Wild. So yeah, that's gonna be one almost for sure, and I'd come close to guaranteeing it. Yeah. You have to remember too, the Hard Knocks is for everybody, right? Not just Jets fans. Lots of people all over the country watch it. So there might be people who don't even know that Quincy Williams is Quinnen Williams' brother or whatever.
Yeah.
So even though that's kind of like an easy one, I think they're going to get that in. And you think about it, your best player, most established player on offense is Aaron Rodgers. On the flip side of that, that guy is Quinnen Williams. He's the best player on the defense right now. He's the number 1 guy. So there's obviously going to be focused on him and what he brings, and then bringing in the family aspect. I almost guarantee we get these 2 just hanging out by a pool with Quinnen's newborn or something like that. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I like it. I think it would have been really interesting if the deal hadn't gotten done, to see how they would have tried to cover it, because like we've said, you're not getting the full access on that stuff. Would Douglas and Saleh been as willing to discuss Quinnen if he was walking into training camp without a deal? What if he didn't report? What if he was sitting out, but he was, sitting in, essentially, where the players will show up, but they're not participating? We avoid that drama of it, where now we can just focus on the positives. But totally agree. It was the big lingering offseason story, and it's something that can now be celebrated alongside his brother Quincy as well.
Yeah. And real quick interjection. I meant to bring this up before we started drafting. Do you think they will address the fact that the Jets didn't want to do Hard Knocks on the first episode of Hard Knocks? Will that be mentioned, or will that just be buried?
I don't think they're going to bring it up.
It's kind of bad publicity for
I don't think they're going to bring it up. Yeah. I think they're just going to try to do the best that they can with what the Jets are willing to give them.
All right. So now I'm here for my number 2 pick.
My number 2 is still available, so I hope that I hope that you don't take it.
I'm starting to think that we won't have many overlap, because I approach this a little funnily. Let me just make sure. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go for this one. I mean, I think it's huge. This might be your number 2, actually. But I just think everything around Mekhi Becton is going to be really interesting to see. You think about what these last 2 years have been for Mekhi Becton, and there has been 2 season-ending injuries.
Yep.
Weight gain, people talking shit in the media. Obviously his mental health has not been great.
Him talking
he's
shit
come
back.
out and said that. Him talking shit back, the drama, just continued injuries and continued questions. And last year at this time, what we kept saying about Mekhi, it was we talked about it every week, is it truly is going to be a question mark until you see that guy go out there week 1 and, be on the football field. And I think, that is obviously still true, because, at the end of the day, we need him to get healthy or stay healthy until, the season and throughout the season. But it's felt like we've been so in the dark for everything that's going on with Mekhi Becton over these past couple off seasons. And what I'm really excited to see is just his practice attitude and you know how he carries himself around and his interactions with the other guys and how things are going with him. And you know, just to be able to, obviously Hard Knocks isn't perfect, they're not going to show us everything the real way, and it's also like going to be a week delayed or whatever, but to be able to actually get some type of insight and like a feeling on the pulse of like what's going on with Mekhi Becton, how is that going, what is, you know, happening in the building, I think that's going to be really exciting to see, and it's going to shed some light on something that otherwise, you know, we've really been in the dark, and fans have a lot of opinions about it, but we haven't really known what's going on, you know, during practice, during training camp, how he carries himself, how he looks. So for me, Mekhi Becton, it's been a story since he was drafted. He's supposed to be, you know, this cornerstone left tackle, you know, piece, and this is a make or break year for him. So I think this is going to be a huge focus for Hard Knocks.
Yeah, that's a great pick. It's going to be a huge topic of conversation. This is one of those ones, and I will say it was very high on my board as well too. So it wasn't my number 2, but I had it. I would have taken it in that next round as well. To me, you know, when I worry about what the Jets are going to give, like when I talk about the negative topics of Hard Knocks, are we going to get the full access into Mekhi? Like if Mekhi is a problem early on, and say that, you know, he's hussing and fussing over being a right tackle, or maybe he's just not, you know, ready to go. What access are we going to be given into Mekhi? I really hope that we do get the full story, because you're right. There is a lot that we don't know the ins and outs of. We can hope that we can think that we've heard all of it, but we're not there at practice. We want to see what's going on. How is his behavior around his teammates? You know, he's another guy that I was mentioning when we were talking about Quinnen, where it's like these other players have come, you know, they've outspoken, they're unhappy and all this, and Quinnen kind of just kept shut. Mekhi is one of those guys that's still on the team where you're like, what do you want out of this upcoming season? And I think, you know, being able to shed a light on that and get some time with him will be really good to feel that way. Does he feel in a situation where he wants to prove his worth, you know, and commit to being a good right tackle with the hopes of following in, you know, the steps of like an Orlando Brown Jr., one of these other tackles that then gets traded to be another team's left tackle the year beyond? Does he prove himself to where, hey, Dwayne Brown is going to retire at the season end, and they've all mended things here with the Jets where, hey, you're the left tackle now for the New York Jets? Like there's a lot of ways that his season is going to unfold, a lot of different avenues. And so that will be a really intriguing topic of conversation as we approach this summer and hopefully the season, because we need a good offensive line. We need a solid 5 up there, and Mekhi is an integral part of that. So hopefully he, you know, this is a story that goes more positive than it does negative.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, the sub storyline of it is exactly what you're just talking about. You know, like him saying, I want to be a left tackle, and Robert Saleh saying, go out and earn it. And Dwayne Brown being an established veteran who had a really good year last year as a left tackle. You know, are we going to see some of those nuanced conversations about that? You know, and Mekhi's one where you do worry of like how much will be included, how much will be excluded, just because it seems like such a like radioactive topic, you know, like it could go really well or really poorly. And yeah.
Yep, I agree. It was when I wrote down my topics, the topic name was Mekhi Becton roller coaster, because that's just all it's been so far. There's been some good that we've seen more recently. There's been a lot worse. You think that he's on the right track now as well too, but only one way to find out, in HBO hopefully will shed a light on that for us all. All right, so I've got 2 now. I've got 2 picks.
Yeah. And then you only have 1 left once you're done. So
shit. I got to be really careful with this, because I do want to have a good variety in here. You know what? This to me was my number 2, so I'm just going to stick with this one.
Yeah.
To me, one of the storylines I'm most excited to shed a light on, and I'm taking a combination of guys, it's the rookies of the year. You know, we have a situation here in New York where a guy in Garrett Wilson, a guy in Sauce Gardner were undoubtedly the best of their class this past season. You know, people could argue, you know, you if you wanted to throw Brees in there with the rookies, I'm not going to. I think he fits into a different type of storyline. But for me, to be the Jets and coming out here where you're entering your second season, and you not only have the best wide receiver of last year's draft class and a guy that is going to be even elevated there with Aaron Rodgers, but you've also got undoubtedly one of the top cornerbacks in all of football in Sauce Gardner. Their storyline, I would love to see if there's, what the relationship between the two is. I think HBO is going to spin their story and spin their web together. No, they don't play the same position. No, they're not on the same side of the field, but they are intertwined together because they were of that same draft class, picked 6 picks apart, and they both had dominant rookie seasons. So to me, I'm really excited to see about like how are they going to form these two and tie them together. Garrett Wilson obviously is going to get a massive bump in production this year with his new quarterback Sauce. Teams aren't going to throw his way. And we had this conversation last week when we were talking about the beef with Asante Samuel. It's like people are like, oh, got to get more. People aren't going to throw his way. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the Sauce relationship with Aaron Rodgers because, as we all remember, Sauce picked him off. They won in Green Bay. He puts on the cheese head as well too. So that was a really fun storyline. You think of the offseason in the recruitment of Aaron Rodgers, where Sauce was like, "I'm going to burn the cheese head if we can get him. We'll make amends." So I'm just excited to see the two pillars of the 2022 NFL draft class. Both members of the New York Jets, and just how they are kind of, in a second season also now as slightly more established players taking on a little bit larger of a role there. Yes, you were fantastic on the field. How are you in the locker room? How are you behaving around guys, the rookie classes, corners, wide receivers, new guys to the team? I'm very excited to see how Sauce and Garrett are kind of spun through the eyes of Hard Knocks this summer.
Yeah, I like that pick. Obviously, those are two guys that it will be exciting to just like get more, insight into who they are and what makes them tick and how they act.
You could do Sauce is one guy that I think you've seen so much of. He's done, the magazines, and he's got I feel like Garrett almost, I don't know enough about. So I'm really excited. Like, while I know we're going to get great stuff out of Sauce, I'm really excited to learn about who Garrett Wilson is as a person.
Yeah. And I think that can be said for a lot of these guys. The Jets have done a good job of like building these like fun, care about football. Football is everything. Like good guys who seem to have a really good relationship off the field. It'll be exciting to see all those guys' dynamics. I definitely like your twist because for the purpose of this draft, like how will HBO spin it? I totally am with you. That makes perfect sense. Like they're gonna show the two of them and talk about one, talk about the other, show them going against each other, which is awesome. Like that. I already know like that is gonna get me so hyped when they show the clip of Garrett Wilson running one-on-one on Sauce Gardner. I was just watching the old Hard Knocks, and they were talking about how I was telling to my girlfriend, I was like, this team is so stacked. Like they just had so many guys, and they show, Braylon Edwards running against Cromartie, and those are even the number 2 guys at their respective positions. And it's like that team was just so stacked. And that's kind of how this feels. Like you have two players who immediately came in, one rookie of the year. The best thing to project future success is previous success. So yeah, obviously really excited for those guys. And I agree with you, like seeing them take on leadership, they go from rookies who basically, if they do anything positive, it's going to be looked at as a great thing. Now it's okay, you're in the league again. You better live up to these expectations. To quote Rex Ryan, the best place to be is where expectations are high. So yeah, that'll be excited to learn more about those guys and just see how they're continuing to attack us. Hopefully, I mean, these are, 2 of our best players,
franchise cornerstones
for the next long while.
Yeah, 10 years. Put 10 years on there, Theodore. 10 seasons.
I'm in.
All right. With my wraparound pick, I'm gonna throw a little variety in there. This is a personal pick. This is something that I'm just very invested in getting some time on. I want the Nathaniel Hackett redemption story. Like I want like a good 20-minute chunk on that. And I say personal because I have been one of the earliest supporters of Nathaniel Hackett back to his offensive coordinator days with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I thought what he was able to do with that team, you get them to an AFC title game with one of the worst quarterbacks in football. I just was very impressed with him early on. He continues it in with Green Bay, and you're catching him at such an intriguing time because obviously he had one of the worst head coaching experiences in recent memory. You know, he kills it with Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVPs. Or was it back-to-back? Yeah, he went back-to-back.
Who are we
Right?
talking about?
Or Aaron Rodgers.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
back-to-back
yeah,
MVPs.
back to back.
Yeah,
Yes,
so he goes back to
19
back.
and 20.
He does a great job with that, and then he gets hired as the head coach of the Denver Broncos. They bring in Russell Wilson, and it couldn't have gone worse. You know, it just was bad on all accounts. And so now you've got him back here, back to the position really that he made his name at, offensive coordinator. He thrived in Jacksonville. He thrived in Green Bay. He's now here in New York. I am just all in on a heartwarming redemption story for a coach that I think, you know, listening to him in interviews, I've listened to him talk with Pardon My Take before last season, just like a good dude. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing how he is taking this opportunity to really hone back in on his craft, acknowledge what went wrong in Denver, how, you know, his relationship with Aaron Rodgers, how he's going to work with these great offensive pieces like a Breece Hall, like a Garrett Wilson, you know, managing an offensive line. You know, I'm just very excited to see him get a second chance at proving why he is an unbelievable offensive coach in football, because he really is.
Yeah, I think he's probably been overshadowed by Aaron Rodgers a little bit in all this, especially when a guy who comes in with the prominence and history that Aaron Rodgers has, you just kind of see that guy as an extension of the coordinator. But I'm totally with you. I think you might even be a little too close to the situation because you love Hackett and you want to see it. You think it's personal, but like I think that's a huge one that probably tons of people are excited to see. You know, because obviously there's a great story there of everything that went wrong last year, his previous success with Rodgers and the Packers. So yeah, that will definitely be awesome, and hopefully it you know, it will be definitely funny because Nathaniel Hackett was kind of like the easy butt of the joke, or is it butt or butt of the joke? I don't know. I don't want to sound stupid, so I'll just come out and let everyone know I don't know.
It sounds the same when you say it. You're not typing it out, so it sounds the same.
True. So it will be funny that like he's going to be the first thing that everyone sees after being removed from the 2022 season, you know, and like there will definitely be some jokes going around on Twitter and things like that. But I'm totally with you.
There will be jokes in Hard Knocks about it. Like he is a very like humorous guy too. Like I'm sure he's going to crack a joke about how poorly it went.
Yeah, I'm sure. And for me, my Hackett spin, which I'll just kind of throw in here was like the Packer reunion. Like I think they'll be like, and you know, camp comes with some familiar faces.
Yeah,
and we got to clip this if this happens.
Oh, that's great. That's totally gonna be it.
Like it'll probably be first scene Aaron Rodgers, and then they'll go right into Hackett and the offense, and then they can go wherever they want from there. But you think about, you know, you have Hackett, Rodgers, Cobb, you have Doyle,
Billy Turner.
Yeah, there's a ton of
Adrian
guys.
Amos.
It's going to be really easy for them to kind of like at least bring that up in some way.
Yeah.
And you know, talk about the Hackett Rodgers relationship, the Rodgers Cobb relationship, having Doyle in that QB room, they're going to make seem as like this huge thing. You know, so yeah, I totally think that's a good pick, and it's definitely an important thing that will almost certainly be talked about as the offensive coordinator. But yeah, Hackett, our boy Hackett he definitely needs that redemption arc. Like last year was not a good year for him just for his brand, you know.
It was bad.
And hopefully most of that falls on Russell Wilson and the situation and having to be a head coach and not being able to focus on one thing.
You know, thankfully Urban Meyer existed, or else like we look at Nathaniel Hackett as like the worst of like the 21st century. Like it ended so quickly, and it was so bad from day one. And I've always said, and I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson guy out there, like we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out who was more wrong. Maybe it was both weren't just a good pair. Maybe Sean Payton makes Wilson electric, and maybe Nathaniel Hackett is great here with the Jets. But like, we're going to figure it out one way or the other. So yeah, really excited to see Nathaniel Hackett get some airtime on HBO.
Love it. This is a fun game. I wish we could do this every week.
I was thinking, my thought that just popped in my head when we get to the honorable mentions, I was like, this is going to be the longest fucking podcast we've ever recorded. So
right. Yeah, true. All right. So I got 2 picks here to end it, right? So I just go back to back.
You go back to back, and then I've got one more.
And then you got one left. All right.
Yep.
So I got two here. So, all right. So end of the draft here. My first one I'm going to go with is I'm very excited to see all the old players that were former Jets, especially from my time, those AFC Championship years. I'm going to be really excited to see them all make their appearances at training camp. And guys, I'm thinking of specifically, Mark Sanchez, Damian Woody, Brandon Marshall, Nick Mangold. I'm sure there's some other guys I'm forgetting.
So you are this was going to be what I was going to steal in the last round, and I'm going to tie this in because it deals with the same thing. I mean, I'm handing you this, so just take it as a gift. I mean, we're going to get the Hall of Fame. We got the Hall of Fame game. We're getting Darrelle Revis and Joe Klecko. Like, we're getting that content as well too.
Certainly.
So this is all into the same kind of realm here. That's where I was going to go with my final pick. So I'm happy.
I love that. Damn, I'm sorry to steal that from you a little. It's kind of. You could have gotten away with it there.
To me, it's in the same kind of realm.
Seeing the old players will be awesome. The guys I listed, especially, are just like media personalities, so they're going to be around, at least for like one day. But guys like Mangold and Woody, they kind of like cover the Jets. So that will just be fun. I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun conversations of former players talking to the current guys, of them kind of playing around, talking about things that they used to see and dissecting the game together. It's just going to be really fun and really nostalgic. And to bring in what you're saying, like the fact that we're going to get Revis being inducted into the Hall of Fame, like that feels so perfect, because he deserves like as big of a stage as he can get for that. And for him to be able to do it on this show that however many people are going to watch is huge. I forgot what else I was just going to say about Darrelle Revis, but no, it's exciting. And it's like, this is what we watch it for, like I keep bringing it up, but on the last time the Jets were on Hard Knocks, it's all about Revis holding out, and then here we are 12 years later, 13 years later, and it's all about Revis fucking going into the Hall of Fame game. Like, that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, that'll just be fun to see all those guys kind of mix it up with the new guys. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't even think to the extent of like Sanchez and Mangold, who are definitely now more like public figures of it, but we saw in training camp last year them being around the team, and it just to the point that they're at now. I believe they got it. Mark didn't, but there was the Ring of Honor that they got Mangold, and was it DeBrickashaw that also got in there as well too last year?
Yeah, I think it was Mangold, Brick, and who am I forgetting? Was it Woody? I don't know.
Could have been. I don't know. But to mix in there as well too, like I said, the Hall of Fame game, it is perfect timing to go and recognize two Jets legends. It probably would be that I guess maybe that second episode, because the Hall of Fame game is going to be after the first episode airs. So it might be that second episode where we'll get a lot of good content.
Yeah, green and white will be the first episode. It's always the team scrimmage,
but getting to recognize it, and it's on one hand it's funny because it's not like the Jets, it's not like this crew that we're talking about is like Super Bowl champions and guys that won titles with the Jets. They but it is kind of the most important guys of the 21st century, and to be able to highlight Revis and Klecko as well too there, you're going to get some really good time talking about just some all-time great Jets there, and recognize that maybe it hasn't, brought them the most success on the field, but there were some great players to be a member of the organization over the last 2 decades. So I after you mentioned Mangold and Sanchez, I was like, we've got the Hall of Fame game as well in there too. So I think that all ties in as to like former Jets greats that are going to be parts of Hard Knocks and members of what, they're going to all get some airtime on here.
I wonder if Namath will still come out. He's obviously a little older these days, but he always likes to come down to training camp. So yeah, that should be fun. I think you're gonna love my last one.
I have a few that I'm still trying to figure out which one I'm going to take with my last pick. You might make my life easier, but I'm excited to see where you go with this.
Yeah, well, where I'm going with the last one, which part of me wanted to pick this one first, and then I was like, that would just be disrespectful to everything else. But I'm really excited about the diving into the Zach Wilson story.
Yeah.
I don't, because he's now the backup quarterback. I think maybe it will be like the start of episode 2 or sometime in episode 2, 3 range.
Yep.
But I 100% think we're going to get, Zach Wilson with his family doing something, a day out, whatever, or maybe when they went to the Taylor Swift. Well, I guess they didn't know they were going to be on. That's another interesting thing is usually Hard Knocks has some clips from things that happened previously, but this got announced so late. It feels like they wouldn't have had time to do any of that.
Right.
But I think there will be some type of like, oh, here's Zach Wilson with his big family, doing something. And then I also just think, we've talked about it. Like, I was ready to bury Zach Wilson and say we should cut him, get rid of him, do whatever. And the one potential thing that could have happened that would give me a 5% chance that this guy could make it work is Aaron Rodgers coming to be the quarterback in front of him. So I think that's going to be obviously a really interesting dynamic to jump into. They've been friends, that's been in the media. They've talked highly of each other. It will be funny, like a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers and like a 23-year-old Zach Wilson is kind of like an odd couple there, but I think that's like an easy one that they're almost certainly going to get into. And I guess like my prediction, my projection, that I really want to stick is like there's almost definitely going to be some, oh, here's Zach Wilson with his big family. Like I really think that's going to happen.
So the Jets have already come out and said they're going to be against kind of like the negative stories and like the cutting the players and all the stuff like that. But one thing that Hard Knocks is good for is guys that need just a little positive stuff in the press. Nathaniel Hackett was a guy that I took that was the same way. Zach Wilson, like, things couldn't have gone worse for the former number 2 overall pick. And this will be a good opportunity to just shed some light on the person that Zach Wilson is. He got a really bad rep for, his quotes post in that Patriots game last year. And it was just like, this guy doesn't have, what it takes to be the leader of a team and kind of the franchise quarterback. So this will be a really good opportunity for him to paint himself in a brighter light, to show a lot of acceptance over what happened in the early stages of his career, how he is going to take this new opportunity as a backup behind one of the all-time greats to learn and try and resurrect his career beyond these Aaron Rodgers seasons. It was one of the ones that I was going to include here. I've heard a lot of people. Nice. I've heard a lot of people talk down about the Zach Wilson story. I read a piece where it was like, they were talking about like how they didn't want to even see, the Zach Wilson conversation. There is a way in which that you're going to leave the Zach Wilson conversation thinking higher of him. You're going to think better of Zach Wilson when the fluff piece on him is done, because one, not much lower that you can go on where your thoughts are with Zach Wilson currently. Definitely. But two, I think they are going to do a really nice job trying to focus in on the person that he is, the man that he is, and how he's taking this opportunity head on, and he's going to embrace this backup role and still be, a contributor to the organization as a good member of the Jets, not necessarily with his production on the field. Hopefully that is something that comes later on, but as of right now, he is just going to be there for the team and helping out in the best way that he can, and learning from this opportunity. Because here's the thing, beyond Aaron Rodgers, being a guy in here that's going to teach him a lot as well too, this is an offensive coordinator that isn't taking this job for the first time. We've seen him do wonders with a guy in Blake Bortles. We've seen him do wonders in a guy with Aaron Rodgers and how he resurrected Rodgers after a few down seasons. Like, there is work that I think Nathaniel Hackett can also provide to Zach Wilson here, where it's like, yes, we wanted the first few seasons of Zach Wilson's career to go better, but all things considered, this isn't a bad spot to be in as a way to kind of, hopefully, if there is something in there, because talent is in there, but if there is an opportunity for him to turn things around in the slightest, this isn't a bad spot to be in.
Yeah, and I really do think like it's hard when things kind of fall apart on you, like in Zach Wilson, he didn't have the confidence, he didn't have the technique, he didn't have the footwork, like all these things kind of happen. It's really hard to kind of like focus on those things on the fly while you're also trying to like perform while you're playing, and have the pressure of the team and the results all on you. So I do think there's definitely an opportunity for Zach, the pressure's kind of lifted off him to be the number 2 guy. He's really just got to focus on what he needs to get done. And hopefully he can at least be some type of player. there may be times that say Aaron Rodgers gets injured or say something happens, like Zach Wilson being a quarterback for this team is still like a very plausible thing that could happen. So it's important to just kind of monitor that, obviously, because it's either going to be kind of what we all projected where, all right, this guy's gone. He really can't get it done. Or we're going to see a remarkable turnaround that none of us ever really expected.
Look, man, you're dead on. I'm laughing because it's just like such a scary situation to find yourself in. But like, imagine we get to this point where even for a drive, there are times where like, last season where, Rodgers came up limp and then it's Jordan Love in there for, a drive or two. And it's like, there's going to be situations where Zach Wilson is probably out on the football field. So very interesting to monitor. Obviously, one of the bigger, topics of conversation here. So it was one of the three that I was trying to pick between for my final pick. So I'm glad I just have to narrow this down to two now. But it's definitely a worthwhile conversation. Teddy, I'm doing it. I'm doing it with my final pick. We can't not talk about Denzel Mims here. We gotta put in some Denzel Mims talk. Here's where I sit now. To me, this is those storylines where the fringe guy on the team, Denzel Mims is sitting at a position now where, typically you're going to carry 5 guys at the receiver position at the end of the season. And if you take a look at those 5 right now, it is going to be Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Corey Davis, Mecole Hardman, and Randall Cobb. Like, to me, those 5 guys are roster locks. You could talk me into Randall Cobb just doesn't have it and they cut him. But to me, you brought him in with Aaron Rodgers to keep him here throughout the season, even if he's just sitting the bench, like he's going to be here. Do the Jets carry a 6th wide receiver and keep Denzel Mims around? Do they try and trade Denzel Mims for the 2nd season in a row? Can you even trade Denzel Mims, as they probably tried to last year? He is one of those guys that has, there have been guys that have stated their displeasure with the team. Jamal Adams, when he first got here, they shipped him off as soon as they could. Elijah Moore, expressed his displeasure with the team. They shipped him off as soon as they could. The Jets have held on to Denzel Mims throughout this entire tenure. He is one of those guys like, Quinnen Williams, we talked about how he's the first guy to get the 2nd contract. Denzel is like the guy that has stood through here and he hasn't gotten on the field. And he's one of those guys that I just want 10 minutes on just being like, how's your experience been with the Jets? Because I want to know your perspective of it, because right now we see him as a guy at the bottom of the wide receiver room. And this is the point into the season now where you look and you're saying positionally, how many guys are going to keep on the active roster? I don't think he's a guy that sits on the practice squad. So like, I just want to know his experience and his tenure with the Jets. I want to hear him make his case for how he can be, a helpful asset to this team in 2023. And I want to see how it ends, because are they going to keep 6 wide receivers? Do they? Maybe they do. I don't know. Are they going to, does somebody get banged up? Do they trade away somebody? Does Randall Cobb not have it in the tank anymore? Like, this is just such an intriguing storyline. And he's been such a fun topic of conversation before even this podcast started, just conversations of Denzel Mims between the two of us. I want 10 minutes on Denzel Mims.
And I think this is like a pick for the Jets fans, because this is one where like the national media isn't going to care about Denzel Mims, but anyone who's been a fan over the last 4 years, it's like when we drafted Denzel Mims, we were hoping he could be Garrett Wilson, like when you take him in the 2nd round and do what you do, like you're hoping, is Denzel Mims going to be the guy? Is he going to be able to be the number 1 wide receiver? And, through like seemingly negative things of, him not working hard enough and things like that, to then that narrative kind of turning around and it always being positive about him, but him really just being a backup guy who doesn't get in a ton. I totally am with you. I'm excited to see this. I will say this is kind of the discussion we had about Mims last year, where we were like, are they really going to keep a 6th receiver? And they ended up doing it. They ended up keeping him, Jeff Smith, Braxton, along with Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, and Denzel as the 6th guy. So, part of me is like, he's lasted this long, there might be some reason that he did. I'm trying to remember, because the big thing with Denzel Mims, it's always like, if you're not going to be a contributor on special teams, it's kind of hard to put you in that spot.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if he has like done more special teams over the past couple of years. I'm kind of not really remembering that very clearly.
I'll take a look.
But yeah, that will be an interesting one to watch, definitely. And you know, he's a guy I root for, definitely, just because of the history we've had with him. But you know, we've talked about it a ton. This wide receiver room is loaded, and you know, when you look at two guys who maybe are going to be on the fringe of that sixth spot with Randall Cobb, or that fifth, sixth spot with Randall Cobb and Mims, you know, it's like they're not going to be cutting Randall Cobb, who they brought in, who's one of the best friends of the quarterback. Like that's not going to be happening. So I'm totally with you. I'm rooting for him to not get cut, but I get you.
He was on 3 special teams plays last season. So
yeah, see, that's not great for him. That's not great for his case. But that's what the thing is, like he didn't get cut last year, you know?
Right. I also think last year, without knowing, I guess, early on with Garrett Wilson, I guess you could say that the Jets knew because they were in the organization, but you were looking at this depth chart saying, like, we probably need to keep a few guys around. And then, you know, Braxton has the down year. Elijah takes a step back. Like, it was necessary to have more bodies here, where you're sitting there and it's like, Denzel Mims is firmly your 6. Maybe he's more talented than Randall Cobb, but Randall Cobb isn't going anywhere. He's here because Aaron Rodgers is here. So now you're sitting and you're like, okay, if we're looking at positions and where we need other guys at, they still need, you know, they probably could use some more depth at linebacker. You know, you want to have more offensive linemen. Exactly. Like you need to, like, we're going to get a Denzel Mims story. I need it. I need it, and that'll finish.
I'm excited for that
here
as well.
Yeah.
Pretty good draft. Those are good picks.
Great picks. Yeah. What got left off the list for you? We don't need to spend forever on them, but I do want to have a few conversations over some things.
Yeah, no, definitely. At the top. So, I mean, just quick. One I added late is like DJ Reed. I'm hoping that just the fact that like more people will be watching, you know, people can kind of, oh, DJ Reed is their other cornerback. And I think that would be good for him because I mean, he like tweets about it himself all the time, but like he is that guy who is just so good and gets no recognition. So I think that would be good if he could kind of get a little bit of that Hard Knocks love. Yeah. Another one I had was, you know, a newborn baby. I'm not exactly sure where we stand with, you know, like I think Quinnen just had a baby, right? And Makai had one last year. But I feel like they love being like, oh, I'm a new dad. Like I think that's gonna be in there, definitely.
Didn't have that one on my board.
What else did I have? You hop in with a couple here.
But the one that I was gonna choose, I chose Mims because he's the story that I need. The one that I was choosing is the offensive pieces that are coming back from major offseason surgeries or major surgeries, essentially. So, like, we didn't mention Breece Hall at all. Breece Hall is a big storyline here. This offense changed drastically when he got hurt. And not just him. To me, it's a trio of players. It's Breece Hall, Elijah Vera Tucker, both of those guys returning and being, you know, key, you know, pieces of this offense. And then, you know, we don't talk about it much. He didn't participate in OTAs. Mecole Hardman did have core muscle surgery in the offseason as well, too. So just offensive pieces trying to get healthy to help this Jets offense out. It took a huge step back when AVT and Breece Hall went down. Mecole obviously is sliding in here in a little bit different kind of a story, but Breece Hall and him and their rebound and their availability during the early parts of training camp will be something very important to monitor.
I actually think that's a huge one and kind of a misstep for us.
I almost took it. I wanted to talk Mims.
But you wanted to roast it. Was the two. Picking Mims over that is absolutely hilarious. What's awesome about that, though, is like, I mean, Breece is, everything he's saying is hyping up that he seems like he's going to be ready. Which, you know, you never want to believe that, but until if he's out there day one of training camp, you know, running full or whatever, like or whatever happening, you're going to start to believe it then. And having this kind of insight and, you know, that extra insight of, hey, we got 40 minutes of Hard Knocks coming out every week. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about where Breece Hall stands, what his likelihood is, how his progress is coming. You know, it matters to a lot of us, both as Jets fans and as fantasy managers. So yeah, that's a huge one. I can't believe I didn't even think of that, but hopefully those storylines are, hey, these guys heal fast as
Yes.
hell.
Oh yeah, exactly. They're ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see a couple other ones. These are more just like football, like worried about the Jets. Like, who's playing free safety? Are we gonna put Whitehead back out there again? That didn't go well last year. Adrian Amos had a bad year as well too. Are we gonna trust Tony Adams, who only has like 100 snaps playing defense in his NFL
Yeah.
career? Like,
It's gonna be Whitehead, don't you
who's
think?
playing? Who's playing for? It was bad. It was bad. It
He'll be
wasn't
back.
good.
He'll be back.
Confidence out of backup tackles. I would love to see just like, let's get feeling good about Max Mitchell, Billy Turner,
Right.
Carter Warren.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm with
one of those
that.
three guys. And then the last one, this was just like another personal favorite. Like, I just need 2 sentences on a microphone from Michael Clemens, because like he is a man of
Yes.
few words, and I just want to hear what those few words are.
Yeah. No, that will be exciting for sure. Michael Clemens is an absolute goat. I love that guy.
I can't wait to hear him.
My only other one I had, so this one, when Blake and I first had this idea, this was something you actually brought up, Blake. But it's like the Ruckert family, Jeremy Ruckert's family, you know, born and raised Jets fans and all that good stuff. The dad who everyone loves. And then along with that, I think the tight end battle is going to be a really interesting thing. Because, you know, we're talking about you can't have a ton of guys at every position.
Can't have 4 of them.
The Jets have Uzama, they have Tyler Conklin, they have
Ruckert,
they have Jeremy Rucker, and then we
Yeboah.
drafted Kuntz in the 7th round along with Yeboah. So that's 5 guys.
Yeah.
All who, you know, like Kuntz is a draft pick. Yeboah is a guy who, you know, we signed as a undrafted free agent and who actually did stick and was able to kind of have a little bit of flashes last year. And then, of course, you have the 2 guys we signed along with the rookie pick last year. So seeing where that group falls and who's kind of the odd man out, you know, it kind of seems like, okay, Yeboah would be the first to go maybe, but then do you keep 4? Are you cutting one of those guys? Like, what exactly is going to happen there? I'm really intrigued to see. And I think, you know, similar to the fullback controversy going on in Hard Knocks, the first time the Jets run it, I think this could be one where we kind of have to monitor it the whole time, because it's not like these are going to be guys who are going to be cut the first round of cuts. You know, to me, these are guys that they really believe in, and it's going to be a hard decision of, okay, who are the 3, maybe 4 that we end up wanting to keep.
This will definitely be they have that classic position group that they mentioned maybe briefly in episode 1, and they keep checking on it in 2, and then you have that final, you know, cut down at in the final episode of Hard Knocks. Definitely a position group that it isn't the most enticing. It's not like they've got, you know, a glamorous set of tight ends there, but it is a very competitive room, and you're right that it is a guaranteed lock that we are getting 10 to 15 minutes of the Ruckert family, born and raised in the area, huge Jets fans. Like, that is, to me, that conversation outside of the big ones that we know we're getting Aaron Rodgers, we know we're getting Quinnen, we know we're getting the rookies, like the fringe storylines that we're going to get. I almost think I am guaranteeing Denzel Mims. I'm guaranteeing Jeremy Ruckert. Like, we are getting those insights, which are going to be super, just fun parts of the show. Not really the X's and O's, but we're going to get the really interesting storylines of both of those individuals and their families and the kind of the ties to the New York Jets, essentially.
Yeah, hell yeah. I think this it's gonna make watching even funner now, more fun, because now it's like we have this extra motivation. Like my big questions coming away from this: are we gonna see the inside of Aaron Rodgers' house? You know,
no way.
Are we gonna dive deep into Mekhi Beck? Yeah, but even his Jersey house, maybe. Like, are they gonna all these kind of predictions that we've had of you know, is it going to go directly from Aaron Rodgers to, hey, here's some familiar faces with that, you know, like these are going to be kind of fun little things happening that we can almost guarantee.
Yeah, they're joking about the Packers.
So this will be a good time to watch. I'm really excited for this, to be honest, man.
This got me amped up.
I haven't watched all of Hard Knocks in a long time, and I'm real excited to get in. I've been listening the theme song, which is so iconic, obviously. For any Game of Thrones out there, it sounds very similar to the Reigns of Castamere, which is, it's like the Lannister song in Game of Thrones. that's like a theme in it. But for anyone, that's just a little Easter egg out there, because
Nerd.
it's almost like they were taken from each other.
That's funny. I am a nerd. No, I know. I like Hard Knocks
is a banger song.
And Game of Thrones. I'm a fan both ways. Oh, very fun. Well, Teddy, this is exciting. I think it'll be really fun. I mean, we're just a couple weeks away from Hard Knocks starting on the 8th, so we've got 2 more episodes that will come out before the first episode of Hard Knocks. So we're really knocking on heaven's door here.
And you know what I just realized, Blake?
What?
The Jets preseason game is August 3rd.
Wait, the Hall of Fame game is the 3rd?
It's always a week before. Remember, it's always a week before the first week.
11th.
Nope. So it's possible that might even be episode 1, the Hall of Fame game.
It definitely will be, right? It has to be. They have to spend some time on it.
You would think so.
August 3rd. I didn't realize. For some reason I thought
it's always a week earlier.
Yeah, but I thought shrinking to 3 weeks of the preseason meant that it was all pushed back an extra
No,
week.
that last week is just a bye. They still kept that 4th week.
Oh.
Yeah, it's lame.
That's a bummer. Yeah. Well, hey, we get
the
Hall of Fame game soon. Are we gonna have to do a Hall of Fame game preview podcast next week, or
probably?
Well, it'll fit in 2 weeks from now.
The Hall of Fame game is always like, it's such a tease, because it's like, oh, I'm so excited for football, and then it's oh, this is a preseason game. Oh, there's not any other games for 7 days. Like.
But even the game itself, you're just like, all right, I get it. And cool. Sure.
Like, right away, you're like really excited, and then like after the first quarter, you're like, all right, that was fun.
Yeah, I can turn off the TV now. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. All right, cool. Well, Teddy, wraps up another great episode. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back here next week. Again, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Same as the YouTube channel. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake. Exciting times. We're going to be forward. We're going to come back next week to our New York Jets versus the world. We've still got a couple of teams that we want to dive into with that, but we wanted to take a break to really hone in on Hard Knocks and get us excited for that as well too. So we appreciate you listening as always, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.